Hey everybody, welcome to Robby's Reptile Radio. Today we're doing a solo episode. I know a lot of you are going to be crushed that my usual co-host isn't here. That's sarcasm. There's really a lot to catch up. One, I've got all these questions that I asked you guys on my story, so we're going to get to those at some point. It's been a really busy past couple of weeks. I haven't filmed any videos or done anything. Finally, we are in the gecko house, the breeding barn, as some people have called it, the gecko cove or whatever. It's been a lot of work, and I figured I would kind of talk about the process of getting a building like this and the things that have been involved in even doing something like this. So luckily, right, when we got the building, I went to this lot that just sells buildings, you know, because Texas. And they had a bunch of different sizes. And originally, I thought that I was just going to get like a 16-foot by 25-foot, or like a 10-foot by 20-foot, something like that. Just a small little building that can be like my little gecko house. And then, one thing after another, they were showing me another building that actually had been repossessed by the previous owner. Not really, though, because they had delivered it. And then the uncle or something found out that they had bought it, and they were like, I don't want this, give it back. And so then they took it back. So I was able to actually get this very building at a 10% discount because it was technically used. So it ended up costing, before taxes, it was $21,000. And the building size that I have is 16 feet wide by 50 feet deep or long. And it has, I think it has 10-foot ceilings, with exposed beams, and it also has a wraparound porch on the front of it, or pseudo wraparound. It's more like an L, which was awesome because yes, I could have asked for a 16 by 50 without a porch, and then I would have had, an extra 75 square feet of space, right, to use. But I, as you all know, I am an avid cigar enthusiast, and nothing made me more happy than the idea of, working all day inside the gecko house, cleaning tubs, feeding, and then whenever I want to take a break, I can just go out onto the porch, have a nice little setup, and be able to smoke a cigar. Maybe live stream while I do it too, because I do that a lot. And so the porch was something I really liked, and I wanted it, even though it's technically not the best option in terms of bang for buck and utilization, in terms of like being able to turn around a profit with this investment. I'm losing space by having this porch, but I liked it. I'm going to try to do some podcasts on there while I smoke a cigar. I just feel more comfortable doing that. And also I just want to be able to, like when you smoke a cigar, it takes like an hour. It's not like a cigarette where you just try to get your high as soon as possible. A cigar is about it sitting there, enjoying the moment, enjoying the flavor, thinking about things, having good conversations, or for me, talking with people, my fans and everything like that, or my customers, getting business done. So when I smoke a cigar, it takes a while, and I don't want to like waste that time just sitting there smoking a cigar. So I figured it'd be something that will force me, the porch will be something that forces me to set up like some sort of live streaming situation out there or filming setup, so that while I'm taking a break from doing geckos, I'll just film a video and talk really quick. Because I like talking anyway. I like talking about what I love, and I love answering people's questions and being helpful. So I figured that would just incentivize me to want to be as productive as possible when I am eventually doing this full-time. Believe it or not, I am still not doing geckos full-time. I've probably got about 3 full-time jobs right now. But 16 feet by 50 feet, I think it ends up being about 800 square feet when you do the math, except for the fact that there's the porch, which is 6 feet. So it's like 700 square feet, this whole building that I have now. The flooring still isn't done, but my buddy Geckos Anonymous, I had him drive over, and I paid him in geckos to help me paint all the walls. So all the walls were painted. Because I am so unbelievably lazy, he started painting part of the wall, normally like you would paint a wall. And I was like, oh, no, don't do that. Only paint from like eye level up. And he was like, what? Why? And I was like, because the whole wall is just going to be racks anyway. We're just painting it so that for now, when it's not tall enough, it looks like it's fully painted. And he was like, that is so like you. And I was like, yeah. But in this corner, we have the studio, or the eventual studio. It's all just black. And I'm going to get some, like, I think it's called faux or fox. I call it fox. I'm going to get, like, fox brick walls and fox walls and stuff like that. There's going to be tons of plants, really plant heavy. Sorry, there's a giant. My neighbors are doing construction, so there's a big truck driving by right now that is rattling the whole building. Wow, this is terrible. And because I'm sure people will ask, yes, I do have a bottle of goat milk next to a bottle of kombucha on this table with me. Trying to make sure that you guys don't hear like a really dry mouth where it's like, as a videographer, I hate whenever someone has a cotton mouth because you can hear it in the audio. But anyway, so I deduced that the reason that their lighting looks so good is because the whole facility is white. So it doesn't even matter if the ceiling isn't diffused lighting, it's bouncing off the ceiling, or it's bouncing off the floor, it's bouncing off the walls. So it looks like there's a really soft light, but it's just because they're bouncing and filling the entire room with white light. So they're able to film consistent videos literally anywhere in their facility. They're not limited by one light and a softbox. They're not limited by a boom mic that is on a stand. They're not limited by space. The entire ceiling provides this light, the floor bounces it, and it gives a really even look. So as a filmmaker, I was like, okay, I want to do the same thing. I want to have as little barriers as possible between me and making a video. So I figured I would try to make something, obviously, with my deeper knowledge of lighting, seeing as that's my job, and wanting to shape it, create nice shadows and everything, because that's the thing, there's no shadows in their videos, which is fine. It's great for what they do. It's very clinical. As you guys know, me, I'm much more artsy. I like having unique looking stuff, and for me, having a beautiful image is more important than having a sharp, accurate, clinical, exactly how life is. I like showing the idea of something, and I think that's the best way to describe my filming personality or my filming style. I want to tell the idea of this story, not exactly how it is. You know what I mean? So this lighting is not very well made. I found some lighting. I just found the brightest LEDs that were 6,000 Kelvin or 6,500 Kelvin, which is a little bit more blue than daylight, but that's okay because I wanted to compensate for these tubs. So I figured if I had cooler temperature LEDs, then it would compensate for the tubs being a little blue in video. It's camera stuff. It makes sense to me. But so that's some of the thought that I put into it. And so now it's really good. The problem is, though, that the lights are kind of cheap. And by kind of, I mean really. First, they came completely bent from Amazon. But luckily, they gave me a partial refund of like $30. And I was like, that's not a lot. And then I looked, and it turns out they were only $170 to begin with for 50 feet of lighting, essentially. And the color isn't bad. Again, once the flooring is in here, I think the color balance will be a lot better. The problem is that they do band. And if I speed up this footage really quick, you can see that there's this constant black bars going across the footage very slowly because the shutter speed on there isn't perfectly aligned with the blinking of the LEDs, which is annoying. And I'll probably end up upgrading whatever lights these are because it's not perfect. And I would like it to be perfect because lighting is my big thing. But for now, it's fine and it's getting the job done. Now, when I did move all the geckos into here, there were definitely some hard things that there's some things that I had to learn the hard way. One being, a lot of us don't consider the fact that when you are moving facilities, there's a high likelihood that you might just have casualties along the way. Like if someone's moving across states and then you pack all of your geckos up and then you drive across states or whatever, and then you unpack them, even if you did that as efficiently as possible, you're most likely going to have some adults or babies that drop a tail. You'll most likely have a gecko or two. Like if you have a big collection, there's probably a gecko or two that might die just from stress alone, which sucks. And we obviously don't want that. So that was something that I had forgotten to consider. And when we did move all the animals into here, we got it done in like 5 hours or so. Probably not, more like 2. Over the next week, I had 3 spontaneous deaths in babies, luckily, no adults. But 3 spontaneous deaths. And the only time I ever have a casualty is a fresh hatchling that is like just died in the egg, or it hatched and then it ate something it shouldn't have and then it just died. Or it'll die like within a week of first hatching. They're very, very fragile in that first like week of life. And like sometimes if they hatch while you're sleeping and then they are crawling around in the incubator, whenever they eat their shed, they will get the clay stuck to the shed and ingest it, and then they'll become impacted. And you won't even know until a week later or something like that. But we can't be there the minute that they're born all the time. And also the fact that Crested Geckos incubation isn't as much of a science as it is with like snakes and ball pythons, where they're like, yep, day 55, cut the eggs, or day 55, they should be hatching, and if they're not, then do this. With Crested Geckos, it's like they can hatch in 60 days if you wanted, or they could hatch in 120 days if you wanted. Depends on what you're trying to do. And there's no real science. You could see an egg, and it's not like, oh, if the egg weighs 3 grams, it's about to hatch. I've had eggs hatch at 4 grams, and I've had some eggs hatch at 2 grams. Like, there's no tried and true method. But regardless, I ended up having 3 spontaneous deaths, which rarely happens. They were 3-month-old babies or something like that. So I had to start running through all the possibilities. Why is this happening? How did it happen? One, obviously the most obvious, sheer just stress got to them from the move. Cool. Well, not cool, but okay. We've deduced one possibility. The second possibility is a spike in heat. I am working on getting a thing set up in here so that I can always monitor the temperature and get warned if it goes above 80, let's say. But that wasn't likely. We weren't really having the hottest days. We had like a couple hot days while they were in there that first week. But my AC is really good and it handles all of it. So then the only other possibility that I could think of was the fact that I didn't have a fan in here. I didn't have circulating air. So I asked a couple of friends and they said that's most likely the reason. And immediately I next day on Amazon a bunch of really expensive industrial fans. And now I've hung them from the ceiling, and I have one on the back left and then the others on the front right, so that the air is going like this and hopefully causing like a circle. So the air is circulating more now. And I think that completely solved the problem because I haven't had any more spontaneous deaths and everyone is doing okay with no shedding issues. Cool. So again, as you can see how I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this and then this can happen. Oh, no, I need to also do this. Oh, I also have to make sure I do this. And then, oh my gosh, I had spontaneous deaths. How do I fix this? Oh, I need to make sure I have this. So I'm hoping that you guys can listen to this and learn from my mistakes because I can't Google how to make buying and switching over to a gecko building easy. Like that doesn't exist. No one has that information readily available. So long story short, there's a lot of things that go into setting up a facility like this. I hope that I gave you like a good little list of things that maybe you hadn't considered. I had a couple of people reach out and say they're trying to build the same thing that I did. So that's some words of advice. So learn from my mistakes so that you don't make them. If you make new mistakes, though, that's okay. Like we all need to learn from all of our mistakes, and we're all just trying to do the best that we can. And it's a team effort. I mean, we all need to share as much information as we can. All ships rise with the tide. You want to be able to help your fellow breeders, help your friends, help your enemies even. And, because none of us want any of these animals to suffer. We want them to all do well. We want to make the most beautiful ones, the healthiest ones. We all want to do that. So yeah, anyway, end of that soapbox or whatever. Let's get to your guys' questions. How about that? Oh, the other problem that I was going to talk about is the echo. When I first got here, it was like, yeah, look how bad this echo is. Echo, and it would just like keep going, and it was awful. And then it would have this really high pitched, like, oh, We will be covering the ceiling completely with sound blankets to help with this horrible echo you hear. Unfilmable conditions. So I was like, how do I solve this problem? Well, not only, once you get more things into a building, then it's like less, once you get more things into a room rather, it's less echoey. But you want to dampen the sound as much as possible because sound will bounce off things endlessly unless you give it something to be trapped in, which is, furniture, tables will kind of like lock it down below it or just give it things to interact with. So on the side of the building, and you can see it up here in some of the future videos that I will do, I put black moving blankets and I stapled them all to the ceiling. And that has helped tremendously. Listen, echo. Maybe I'll have a clip if I'm not lazy, showing the before. Like, it's great now. It's very usable. So that was an important thing. And also having it black adds a lot more of this shadow. So the light is a little bit more shaped rather than just being, no shadows. I like shadows. I like having like dramatic looking images, but as long as they're like artful and tasteful. I think right now it's a little bit extreme. I'll figure out how to deal with that later. But I put up a Q&A a while ago. If you guys aren't following my Instagram, that is where I will post, hey guys, I'm filming a podcast. Go ahead and ask me some questions or give me some topic ideas that you want to hear and things like that. So if you aren't following, make sure that you do. It's just Robby's Reptiles, the same as my YouTube. And also, before we get to the questions, I do want to say that if you use code Robby with Ship Your Reptiles, you can save $15 off one order. First question, do you have any incubator egg recommendations? I recommend that you incubate at whatever the room's temperature is, because I heard some knowledge from a breeder and I really liked it, that if you give your eggs a super controlled environment where it's perfectly, 76 or 74 degrees, some people even incubate at 69 degrees, which nice. But, you give them this perfect climate and temperature range, then they're going to be so used to that because literally, not neonatal, but you know what I mean? Like in development, they had the most perfect conditions humanly possible. They're going to only be able to really live in those perfect conditions. And by that, I mean, for me, I will just get an egg and I have a stack of incubators just sitting at room temperature. If it gets up to 82, it gets up to 82. If it gets down to 69, it gets down to 69. Usually, it's about 75 degrees in here. Sometimes it may fluctuate depending on the weather. Nature would do that as well. So I do not give them a controlled environment. And the reason that I started doing that is the breeder that gave me that advice had said that he had been in situations, where he was driving to a show and the box car that he was in with all of his animals ended up getting up to 92 degrees. And he had 0 crested geckos die. And that's because he had heard wisdom before that if you don't baby your eggs and you let them be in whatever the wavering temperature is in the room, that they'll end up being a lot more resistant to temperature fluctuations. I have not tested that, but that's just what I've been doing, and it's been working really well for me. My eggs still hatch within about 90 days, even if it's like 78 in the room sometimes, and I don't have any sort of deformities on the regular, I would say, because I know that sometimes incubation errors can cause deformities. I've had 2 babies total out of, let's say, 400 that I've made in the past 2 years. That had some sort of deformity. And I have them in a little Petri jar with alcohol to preserve them because they're really cool. One is 1 body, 2 heads. The other one is 2 bodies, 1 head. And interestingly enough, those were from 2 completely different breeders that had closed collections and not related at all from different countries. Both of those different pairings. So that was really interesting that happened. But sometimes that could be maybe an egg was jostled around. If I am picking up and moving an incubator, something might have happened. Or it might even be from the temperature fluctuations. But being that it's only 2 out of about 400 to 500 babies and eggs that I've incubated, I wouldn't say that it's from that. Sometimes it just happens. But yeah, so my incubator setup, hey, it might not work for everybody. Some other people might have awesome success doing whatever they're doing, like having a wine cooler set to 69 degrees. Nice. or, having it at 78 degrees because you want to hatch them faster. I've heard that if you have it at lower temperatures, you have better head structure. I might be testing that and making a video on it because that sounds interesting, but I'm not sure if that actually works. But anyway, that's what I do. Frizzy's Reptiles. Shout out to Frizzy's. Amazing reptile breeder in Australia. Do you have a worker? I do. I have my co-host usually. Nick is my good friend that I've known since I was in high school, and he wanted to get out of California, so he moved in with me. I have a spare, tiny house, and he lives there, and he's essentially my landskeeper. So he takes care of the goats and the geckos for me so that I can focus on my other careers, being film and doing a lot of documentary work like that. Like recently I was in Ecuador for a week. I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't have a worker. So yes, I do have a worker. We usually split the efforts. I'll do all the babies and the juveniles because, they're a little bit more fragile, and you got to be able to, breed. You're a breeder. The babies, you want to give them some special attention. The adults, they're smooth sailing. Clean them, feed them, and they're going to keep thriving. So he does the adults, and I do the babies and juveniles. How do reptiles impact your personal life, if at all? I don't really have much of a personal life. The extent of my social life is like my fiance, Nick, and my two other best friends that I do work with. I don't really have friends that I go out and drink or see or anything like that. My whole life's just kind of around my ranch and stuff like that, which is what makes me happy. So for me, it hasn't really affected my personal life. I've never really gone on personal trips until I started dating my now fiance, because she lives in a different state. So I'll only go on 2 or 3 day trips. I only allow myself to do 2 or 3 day trips because I have to come back and take care of the animals. So I guess that's how. But other than that, I've usually never, I don't travel. I hate traveling. So I usually don't ever travel for personal. So I don't really think it has affected my personal life at all. But once people find out that you do breed geckos or breed reptiles, then that's kind of the only thing that they remember about you. It kind of sucks. So even at work, coworkers would be like, "Oh, hey, Robby," and I'm like, "Hey," and they're like, how are the lizards?" And that's kind of all that I'm known for now. So I guess that's how it's affected it. But who cares? When did it become a business? As soon as I had, I originally started with 3 or something or 4. When I first made babies and I sold them for the same price that it had cost me to buy all 3 of the geckos that I had at the time, all the babies that I had made, I was like, oh wow, I want to take this money and buy some really pretty ones. And then from there on, it started becoming more of a business to me. I originally was working with hypo redfoots, and that was going to be my long-term game plan, but that ended up not working out. So now I'm with Crested Geckos. I was trying to get Crested Geckos purely to just practice breeding reptiles and having experience with it, so that once I was able to start breeding the redfoots, because that takes 12 years of age before they start breeding, then I would kind of know what I'm doing on some level, just experience breeding in general. So Crested Geckos were the first species that I started breeding. I wanted to breed bearded dragons when I was younger, but I didn't. But even when I was a kid, I was like, oh wow, this lady just sold me a bearded dragon for $85. That's so much money. If I got another one, then I could start making bearded dragons. And if they make 20, then I could sell them all for 85. That's oh my gosh. So I started thinking about that pretty early on. How did you get started? It's a long story. At the time, I was living with an ex, now an ex. And that was a whole different, deep, devastating conversation to have. But I was living in a 300 square foot studio apartment in Austin, really bad area. And I got a couple of geckos for fun. I had redfoot tortoises, babies, and I wanted to get out of there. And I found out that, oh, well, while I'm breeding these geckos, they're making me, let's say an extra $2,000 a year. That was that little tiny push that I needed to even qualify for apartments that were better, in a better area, closer to things that I needed, everything like that. So I was able to move out, and then I had, I dedicated my whole living room in my now 800 square foot apartment as opposed to my 300 square foot apartment. I dedicated the whole living room to breeding geckos. And if you look on my original film YouTube channel, there's a podcast that I do with someone And you can see that the background for me, the whole wall is just gecko enclosures that were like shittily put together. So I kind of was just doing anything I could to make them. I was really like, as soon as I started getting into it, I was like, this can be big. This can be my job. And then from there, you know, just kept going. But in terms of how it all started, I mean, that's a whole long story of, you know, couch surfing in California after my house foreclosed, joining the army, being in the army, and then getting out of the army, risking everything to become a videographer in Austin, sleeping on my friend's floor for 6 months, and then blah, 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 blah. So, long story. We're not going to get into it. But yeah, hopefully that sufficed. Are crested geckos easy to take care of? Absolutely. They're quite literally the easiest, other than my snapping turtle. They're quite literally the easiest animals to take care of. They don't need a lot of space. They don't need a lot of food. They don't even need a lot of bugs if you don't want to give it to them. Nor do they need a lot of your time or affection. That's what's great about reptiles, is that they thrive off of you not messing with them. They're really easy to take care of, especially for the fact that the whole species can just eat essentially baby food. Like, come on, what other species can you really do that with other than, you know, New Caledonian geckos and some stuff? Like, that's the easiest care that there is. How often do you spray your containers? So this is going to depend on where you live, the facility that you're working with, and mainly just those two things. So I live in Texas. It's relatively humid here, but not really inside of your house. Usually it's like, 40% humidity, I would say, in your house, or 30 or something like that. But when I had all the geckos in my guest bedroom in my house, I got away with, I could spray them only twice a week in the tubs that I use, and that would be the perfect amount of humidity. I had perfect sheds. Everything was great. No mold. Awesome. Now that I've moved into this bigger building in this facility, once I had all the fans up and the circulation right and the ventilation right, I can't do that spray 2 times a week. I can't even do the 3 times a week anymore. The room is so big now that the ambient humidity is so low because there's not enough water to make that humidity. And with the circulation going, or the ventilation, whatever it's called, that dries it out really fast. So I'm having to spray every 2 days now. So like spray, 1, 2, spray, 1, 2, spray. So I guess every 3 days, or however you want to count that. It depends, yeah. So what I might do is get like a humidifier for the room. I've seen other breeders do the thing where you just have it at 60% humidity and then you have a whole automated system and you just give them a water dish. I'm not really at that point yet. I wouldn't consider myself comfortable with doing that yet. I need to get, it's probably going to be a expensive amount of supplies to even get that started. But then my main concern is like having film equipment in here 24/7. I don't know how that really high constant humidity will do with that, because lenses can get fungus inside of them. And then you have to pay a bunch of money to have someone take the lens apart, scrub it all, and clean it and everything like that. Or sometimes it could permanently damage it. So that's something that I'm trying to figure out if it's worth doing. Are freckles a thing, or are they just Dalmatian? Freckles are a thing. And I'll give you a little Linus Tech tip here, some insider knowledge, okay? Freckles, Dalmatian spots are always pitch black. They don't fire up or down. So the best way to identify a Dalmatian spot is when the gecko is fired down. There's no contrast, but the Dalmatian spot will be stark black. A freckle might look like a Dalmatian spot when it's fired up, but when the gecko is fired down, it will fire down with it. So that's how you can tell the difference between a freckle and a Dalmatian spot. Freckles are, in fact, a thing. Also, there is theoretically a recessive Dalmatian gene, and I'm working on proving that because I've had too many geckos that I've paired that are completely spotless. Both of them pair, and half their babies have Dalmatian spots. Horrible. I hate it. But apparently, Little Monsters, Anthony at Little Monsters was telling me that that's really exciting stuff, and I need to try to prove it. So I hate that I am going to try to prove that because I hate Dalmatian spots, and I don't want to work with them. But it seems that there is a recessive gene. Theoretically, what's the word legally that people say? Allegedly. With the way the current economy is, will it affect the reptile hobby? I'm assuming, or reptile sales. I'm assuming what this person said. Absolutely. As you guys all know, right now we are in Biden's economy, and the market's not hot. Cappuccinos went from selling for $10,000 a piece to now they're barely selling for $3,000 a piece. Not because people don't want caps or because people hate them now or that they're being so unbelievably mass produced like Lily White's were. It's literally just because everyone is poor right now, guys. Nobody has money. Everyone is pinching their purses or their coin purses. You know, everyone is trying to save any penny that they can anywhere. Like recently, H-E-B, the biggest grocery store in Texas, just started offering a credit card. Because one, people don't have enough money to even buy food anymore. I can't go to the grocery store without at least spending $180 when it used to be only $100. And before that, when I was a kid, it only was $60. So now they're offering like a credit card where you get 5% cash back on your groceries, which is just so funny because like we're all just running off debt at this point. The economy is going to collapse. We're going to see the worst recession that we've ever seen since the Great Depression or since the 2008 housing crash. It's going to be really bad. So if you're in a fortunate enough situation where you do not have to worry financially, right now is going to be the perfect time to buy up as many geckos and as many breeding plans as you can or projects, because people are going to panic sell and people are going to try to get out of the hobby because they already think that crested geckos are doomed. They also thought that with ball pythons 40 years ago. They were like, there's no future to ball pythons. You're stupid if you buy them. And crested geckos, people are saying the same thing. There's no money in crested geckos. You're not going to be able to become a full-time breeder. You're not going to be successful. Just get out of the hobby. It's not worth getting into it. You should invest in ball pythons is what other people are now saying. But right now, you know, we're going into a recession. People are just trying to sell off what they can, maybe hold their top 5 favorites, but they're trying to sell off all of it because they're realizing I'm going to need money because I might lose my job or I'm going to get a price cut or a pay cut, things like that. So that's what we're going into right now. We're going into one of the worst recessions that we've seen in our generation. So we're going to have to prepare for that. I'm fortunate enough that I have some good paying jobs and some, you know, I have a few safety nets that I can fall back on, luckily. So I'm doubling down in geckos even further because I know that if I can survive this and I can keep pushing past it, that, you know, in 2 years, it'll really pay off. Hopefully I will, you know, really excel in the crested gecko world while other people are trying to panic sell. So right now, if you're smart and you are fortunate enough to have some spare cash, you can buy some geckos really cheap. I mean, I've been able to buy ready to breed or proven females for $300. I've been able to buy package deals of people just getting out of the hobby and getting rid of their whole collection of females, things like that. Like, if you're smart with it, or if you find the right opportunity, I would pounce on it if you are financially secure enough to. But yes, the current economy is definitely affecting reptile sales across the whole hobby. Everyone in the crested gecko game is like, my sales are cut in half at least this year, barely making sales. But, you know, we're also, of course, comparing that to 2020 when you could list a $200 female for $1,000 and she would sell within a day because anyone wanted a gecko immediately because it was 2020. It was weird. This question is, how do you determine prices for your geckos? Well, on a podcast, a bit difficult to really demonstrate. I will be making videos about this. It goes into a lot of things. It depends on the market's demand. It depends on the supply of that, let's say, product, for the sake of speaking about an example. And it depends on, for us, we care about lineage. No other species really cares about that besides, I think, chondros and some other things. But yeah. You know, so lineage plays a good part. You know, if I have a Chad and Chadette baby, even the worst baby is going to be at least like $400 because Chad and Chadette are stellar parents. The best one's going to probably be, you know, $3,000, $2,000 because their quality demands it. But it also depends on the demand at the time. If lily whites are the only thing that anyone wants and you're making non-lily white tricolors, good luck selling them for more than $300, let's say. But right now, the problem is that everyone already has lily whites and everyone's pumping out really bad quality and poor quality lily whites. Now they're, you know, going for $300 or so, when a year ago, you know, good luck trying to find a lily white for less than $2,000. Depends on the market, depends on the demand. But, you know, here's another really interesting example. When I first started getting into crested geckos, a porthole female, $200, $300 maybe if you were crazy. For a ready to breed or a proven like red gecko with portholes, nothing. No one cared. It was like, it's a shitty harlequin. Why would anyone want it? Now, they're selling for like $2,000 because people see how much you can develop it and how interesting it can look. So that's the thing. Like, you can have an idea and you can be like, ooh, I want to make this. And then you work on it for like 3 years and then you start showing some results. And then people are like, oh, damn, I want to buy that. And then you're like, I don't want to sell. And they're like, I'll buy it, 3,000. And you're like, oh, okay, I'd sell it for 3,000. You sell it. You make a couple more, you list them. More people are now saying, oh, wow, it's 3,000, but look how cool it looks. That other person just sold it for 3,000. So I guess that's kind of like what the market's going for. You can try to haggle a little bit. The market will make its price for whatever it is going for. So now red portholes are going for like $1,000, $2,000, when back in the day they were worthless. You know, and phantom now. People are really liking phantom lily whites. Like a year ago, I sold an orange phantom lily white for $800. And I was like, yeah, it's fine. Like, it's a baby, blah, blah, blah. If I kept that and it turned out to be a really nice orange base, that'd be like a $2,000 juvenile. Like, that would be really cool right now. And I have a lot of projects now where I want to start incorporating phantom lilies. I'm trying to make a red phantom super soft lily white. That would be awesome. But, you know, that was back then. That's a deal that I made. And you can't really regret something that you did, you know? Like, in this hobby, it's like I've had some people like get upset with me because they sold me a gecko for a good price and then later regretted it. And it's like, that was a gentleman's agreement. You know, you agreed, I paid you, I got the gecko, it's in good hands. Like, that's a deal. You can't really like look back and then be resentful towards that person because you regret your own sale. You know, if you're too on the fence about selling it, you know, say like, hey, I can't sell it for this price and feel good about myself later. You know, just determine that, I guess. Yeah. Anyway, so prices are whatever the heck you want, really, or whatever people are willing to pay for it. Best investment for reptile breeders: a good camera. I'm sure everyone has said this. If you can take good pictures of a gecko, I could get a $200 gecko from someone that, and let's say my friend is selling a $200 gecko and he posts his, you know, whatever phone pictures in his fluorescent lighting. And then I grab that same gecko and take a picture of it outside or take a picture of it under my proper lighting and I color grade it properly to look as best as it can, exactly how you see it in person. And you can see the depth and you can see the quality and you can see the scales and you can see the texture. And I'm filming a podcast and I am selling that gecko, that exact same gecko, but with my high quality photos. I could list it for at least $350, and someone would definitely be willing to pay that because they can properly see what that gecko has to offer. Or you could even charge more just because of how amazing the photos look, and people will probably buy it because it's perception. If you have high quality video, high quality photo, people will perceive your product with higher value and higher quality. That's just how the cookie crumbles. That's psychology. So for me alone, that's what I would say is the best thing to do, is have a good camera that can take good quality pictures. You don't even need an expensive one. The Canon T5i can probably take better pictures than any phone in the world for the next 10 years because having a larger sensor or something that is dedicated for pictures, it's going to be able to do that one job really well, as opposed to your phone that's trying to do a billion different things at once. It can only do all of them so well. So when you have a camera, or like this is a video camera. There's no photos. I can't take a picture on this camera. What are you stupid? I can't take a picture on this camera. I can only do video. And on my photo camera, I can only take pictures. There's no video mode because they're good at one thing and they excel in it. Yeah, it's more equipment. I've got tables that I can set them on when I'm not using it. Like, you know, like it doesn't matter. So trying to have like a do-it-all, you know, even me, like I don't even have like hybrid cameras that can do video and photo and this and that because they're not going to be able to maximize the quality of either one. So, you know, the Nikon D700 is the photo camera that I use. A lot of people in the professional photography world would say that that is the most outdated camera on the market and ever will be. It's 15 years old. Guess what? A lot of people really like the photos that I post of geckos, and a lot of people really admire the quality that I'm able to upload. And it's because, on my Instagram, I have a layout where they're all in a row, the same color scheme, just so that it looks, really organized. I'm using proper lenses. Some of my photos are taken on my $350 Nikon D700 and a $100 35 millimeter that I have. Other ones are taken with a $1,000 35 millimeter that I have, but you don't need that if you can't afford it. So with only $450 invested, you can take just as good pictures as I do. My knowledge of light and my knowledge of angles and how to position a gecko and everything like that, that comes down to a lot more nuance. But in terms of raw actual technical ability, about $450. You can probably do a lot cheaper too. Like if you got the Canon stuff, you can get by. I hate Sony though. I wouldn't recommend Sony. The colors aren't good. And that seems to be all the questions from the last Q&A that I did. I'm going to look really quick at the new one that I posted. I did get a couple of them, but we will be answering them in the next podcast. So anyway, thank you guys for watching today's video. Again, make sure to use code Robby with Ship Your Reptiles. You just save $15. It's a win-win for everybody. I'm not even getting money from you using the code. I just wanted to be able to save everyone money. Because of course right now, as we were talking about the economy, money's tight. Times are tough. So, originally when I started, shipping only cost $50, $45. Good luck trying to spend less than $70 now shipping anywhere in the country. So that'll help you out just one time though. So anyway, thank you guys for watching today's episode. If you have any more questions, DM me, or next time if you aren't following me on Instagram, do that, because the next time that I post a poll, I'll be answering your questions in the podcast. So anyway, all that YouTube mumbo jumbo, whatever. I'll see you guys in the next podcast.